Is it going now? No, how about closer?
What is Visio?
Who gets to answer this?
You have to answer
Oh, I
that,
have
I
to answer.
guess.
Why do I have to answer it? Visio, yeah, it was a long time ago. It's a Windows desktop graphics application for doing simple schematic diagrams, flowcharts, org charts. And then it also grew over the years to do more complicated diagrams like space planning and more technical diagrams like HVAC system, electrical diagrams and stuff like that.
Computer network.
Oh yeah, computer networks.
That was
big one.
And it was the company that made the software.
Of course, yeah.
So Visio was the product and the company.
That's right.
Kind of both. So
what did my dad do in Visio?
Well, Ted was the founder of Visio. Three people: Ted, Jeremy, and Dave. I always viewed Ted as sort of the visionary person who sort of had the idea and really had the sort of put it down. He was the one who convinced me to join the company. He came out with these little props we used. He had a little green stencil with symbols on it. You probably remember those.
yeah, that's how we could draw when we
Yeah.
weren't any good at drawing.
And then a piece of graph paper, and I went in when the company had first had offices, and I was working at another company, and he said, "Come on over, I want you to work with us." And I went over, and he set these two things down on the table and started talking about the application and how useful it would be and what the market was and stuff like that. And I just was totally hooked, so I left my old company and joined Visio.
Well, it was a good group of people. It was a lot of fun.
So how did Visio's software work? As in, what was it used for primarily?
Again, what was it used for? Again, it was doing schematic diagrams where somebody either wanted to document how a process worked or how a machine or a network or something worked, and the best way to do that is to draw a diagram. If you type it out in words, you can't convey it as easily as in a diagram. And there really weren't very good applications for doing that in those days that were as easy as Visio, and that's why it was so popular.
Well, you asked how it worked. It's interesting because you mentioned the graph paper and the green stencils when I was first trying to pitch the idea, and that's really an idea we brought into the software, where we had these pre-drawn symbols, and you could drag them onto a page, and the page had a grid. It kind of looked like graph paper, and we could put the shapes on a green background, like the green stencil. We called them stencils.
Yeah.
So you'd drag them over and you'd connect them up, and they had some kind of smart sizing behavior and smart connection behavior. So it made doing these drawings easy. So there was kind of the what, which are these kind of technical schematic-y things, and the how, which was what we coined as drag and drop drawing. Kind of take these shapes, drag them onto the page, connect them up, and you're done. Drag, drop, done. That was one of the lines that the guy used.
That was Phil's line, wasn't it?
I think it was Steve Strom.
Steve Strom, yeah, Strom, right. Steve is delirious.
Did either of you ever think Visio is going to be successful?
Well, I always assumed it would be successful, but I didn't realize quite how successful it would be. I think selling to Microsoft was really quite an accomplishment. It got a very good valuation when it was sold, so I was pretty excited.
Yeah, there's levels of success, I guess, and that's kind of it. You start it and you think, yeah, we can build this and we can sell it. You don't really know how many will buy it, and you don't know if corporate customers will buy it and adopt it, and it was really because of that then Microsoft gets interested.
Right.
It was also fun to take it international.
Yeah.
I always thought it was really fun to, I mean, it's always fun to just see people using your stuff in different places in different ways. Germany was pretty good for us. Japan was a really good market for Visio. So it's
also, it was interesting, Visio didn't have an explosive growth. It just sort of had a continuous growth. And so there was never any real cusps. It's like everything sort of moved naturally on to the next level. And it didn't seem surprising. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to grow by that much. And then you finally take 2 years and look back and you go, oh wow, this has really been an amazing amount of growth. But while you're doing it, you don't recognize it as being abnormal or something.
The Windows 95, I think, had a big impact. Visio 4, Windows 95, and we made some good decisions there. I mean, you and
Right.
Lori were really big on, we should talk about that, the technologies we jumped on for Windows 95.
Well, even going back to that, the Microsoft sampler, I mean, that was
Oh, that was
amazing.
great. Yeah, we had
Too.
this opportunity to ship a little version of Visio with, what was it, MS-DOS 5? They put this, it was like DOS 5 and Windows 3 or 3.1.
Yeah.
Microsoft was doing a thing where they're trying to convince customers to upgrade to the new Windows and the new DOS. And this is what, when we, Christmas of '92. So it was an early '93
Right,
promotion.
right, that's right.
And they asked us if we wanted to be on it, and we hustled. Richard did a lot of the work, and we got a sample version together. That was actually a very huge thing, because
Right.
a lot of people, I mean millions of people, were exposed to Visio through that promotion that Microsoft did.
And they had it free, and they
Yeah.
kept using it for years and years,
Oh, yeah.
and then they would finally say, maybe I'll buy the real one. And we had people 2, 3, and 4 years later saying, yeah, I've been using your sampler all this time, I finally thought I'd buy it. And, it was amazing.
Yeah, so that helped success. Windows 95 helped
Yeah.
success. All these, and you'd like to think having a good product helped success, but that was probably the least important of all of the things.
No.
No, that was
Yes.
actually that's like the prerequisite.
That's right.
If you don't have a good product, these other things don't happen.
Yeah.
But a good product itself is not enough.
Right.
So you have to take advantage of opportunities.
So how many products did Visio release, and how many variations on the products did Visio release?
Well, that's some people will say we only ever did one product, Visio, and that's true, sort of. Yet we did a lot of versions. We did a version almost every year, from '92 with version 1, 92. A year later we did version 2 in '93, version 3 in '94.
Which was the Windows 95?
Windows 95 was version 4. We did
4,
right in
yeah.
August of '95 with Windows 95.
Yeah.
And then I think we actually went 2 years till we
Yeah.
did Visio 5.
Right.
And then the next one I think was Visio 2000. I mean,
When did Professional come out?
yeah, and then we added Tech,
Right.
And-
Tech first, right.
Visio Tech, which was for more technical drawing, kind of engineers, and then Visio Professional, which really targeted networking and people doing network diagrams and database and software diagrams. And that was, now, you're right, there was no cusp, but because of the price point,
Yeah.
those were more expensive,
Right.
and they sold pretty well, so it really did kick up
Yeah.
the revenue pretty
Yeah.
quick.
The revenue, but, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of adoption,
Or
it's
in
just that
terms of volume
everything's,
of product sold, it wasn't that many more product, we just were making more money.
yeah,
on the same product.
right. So by the time we were acquired by Microsoft, we had 4 versions of Visio, because we even added a more expensive version called Visio Enterprise. So we had Visio Standard, Visio Technical, Visio Professional, and Visio Enterprise. And we had done this CAD program that we had acquired called IntelliCAD, which was failing. It was a bad idea, so it never really took off. But the 4 Visios were there, and we had done a lot of versions. And that was probably one version, no, that was probably 2 versions too many. So as part of Microsoft, we actually reduced it to just 2 versions, Visio Standard and Visio Professional. And that made it simpler, and it's simpler to understand, simpler to buy, so.
What was the idea of having the company go public after you released a couple products?
Well, at that point, so that was in '95, and you're starting to get beyond where you can just sell the products one at a time, and so you have to start hiring salespeople to go sell to corporations, and to do that you need more money. You also need to expand internationally, set up in, we were already a little bit in the UK and Ireland, but you got to expand in Germany and expand in France and expand in Japan. So all of that takes money, so you want to raise money. But the other part of it is that Visio was a venture-backed company, so we had venture investors, and one way that venture investors turn their early investment into cash is that you go public, and that then your stock is worth something. So the stock that they own, they can then sell on the stock market, and they can get their money back. And getting it back is a bit of an understatement, because probably Visio only had about $5 million invested, is that right?
Yeah, right.
And I'm sure they made hundreds of millions of dollars on that investment. So kind of your good general
Return.
home run for a venture capital firm. And that's also true of the founders and early employees. I mean, the stock that we got as part of starting the company became worth a lot of money, but that only happens with a public offering. So there's the need for the company to raise money to expand. There's also the need to provide a market for the stock that the founders and the venture capitalists owned. So it's really two parts to going public.
So how important or vital was my dad's role in Visio?
It was critical, as I said. He was sort of the visionary for the product. You know, he would sort of talk with the rest of us developers, and we all were contributing to the development of it, and we all had the technical expertise to do it. But there were a lot of decisions you make about what it's going to look like and how it's going to feel and what some of the behavior is. And he sort of pulled all the ideas together and came up with a coherent, product strategy and a product idea, so that when you actually use the product, it didn't feel like there were 500 people doing their own thing all the time. It all felt worked together and worked really well.
Yeah, a lot of it's a design thing. What I didn't do is the core coding. I mean, I did some coding, but usually on, I'd say, the lesser important parts. I mean, Peter and Dave Walter, Mitch Voss, Richard Miyuchi, Mark Davison, and Lori Pierce, in the early days, did really the heavy lifting on the coding, and the product is good because of that work. But there is a cohesiveness, sort of a, at Microsoft they kind of call this architect, but it's not technical how you build an architect. It's more of how does it look, how does it feel, how does it hold together kind of architect. So.
He was good at it. Obviously, the program
That was fun.
Was a great program.
And I think I also enjoyed going out and pitching it.
Right.
If it was customers or investors or stuff like that. So that helps the company succeed even beyond the product.
So what was my dad's connection, or what was the company's connection to Aldous?
Well, the three. Well,
It'd be easier because we always look at
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll do it again. What was the company's connection to Aldous?
Well, the three founders had a strong Aldous connection, or they came out of Aldous. Dave, Walter. Actually, what was it?
Jeremy and Dave were
Jeremy
really.
had already left.
They had already left. That's
Right,
right.
right.
But they had co-founded all this with Paul Brainerd. So, those guys were there. I was early at all this.
Right.
You were, relatively early, as Mitch was, and
I wasn't as early as those guys. I
Well, no,
came
no,
out
no,
of
no,
the
but-
IPO. Yeah, and then
basically the first 7 employees of Visio all came from Aldous. No, not all. It's not like we all left Aldous and went right to Visio. I mean, Peter was at a different company, and Dave and Jeremy had left like a year or even 2 years earlier.
right.
But Mitch and Richard and Mark Davison all went right from Aldous to Visio.
But then another important thing was, I think Ted in particular may have been a little frustrated at all this about the direction the application was going, and saw an opportunity for a product that all this was definitely not going to do. And so when he left all this, he said, well, I can work on this. So it's to a certain degree in reaction to the direction that all this was going that Visio spun out. And that was the clear difference between going after the mass market versus the high-end designer, graphic artist.
No, I think that's right. Well, also, I guess even though we had all worked at Aldous, it's important to know what we did at Aldous, and that we were all writing code for Microsoft Windows at a time when very few programmers were writing code for Microsoft Windows. Aldous started coding for Windows in 1985. I love this story. We started coding for Windows in the summer of '85. Microsoft Windows didn't ship until November of '85. We were coding on Windows before Windows shipped. And
It's Windows
that-
1.
yeah,
Oh,
Windows 1.0, and that
Yeah.
was, so by the time we started Visio, 5 years later, basically in 1990, with 7 of us, and we'd all been working on Windows, and not everybody for full 5 years, but between us we had 30 years of Windows development experience, and that was like unheard of. So when we're out raising money, venture capital, here was a team that knew how to build graphical software on Windows, and we were a pretty good bet. So maybe that's why you asked earlier if we thought we'd succeed. Again, I don't know if we thought the company would succeed, but we knew we could build the product,
Right.
because we had built a product. We had built a couple products in Aldous, so that was valuable experience.
So what was each of your reactions to being purchased by Microsoft?
Well, I mean, it was a surprise. Well, not on the day we announced it. You had been brought in.
Brought in, but
I mean, I was part of the decision to go to talk to Microsoft and sell the company. And, I think it was the right next step in the company's evolution. When you asked us about going public, and we talked about the need to expand and expand internationally, by 1999, which we'd gotten pretty big now. We were doing $200 million a year in revenue. We were selling pretty well in some countries and not as well in others. But we needed another big expansion in sales. And, you ask yourself, well, we can do that ourselves, and, that's a huge investment, or we can look for a partner who already has that in place. And Microsoft clearly did. I mean, they were, they have a global presence. They have a huge enterprise presence, so they sell to business and large, organizations like government organizations, and so they really had the sales and marketing ability to take Visio and take it to yet another larger audience, and that just made more sense really than us growing the sales and marketing to the size that we would have had to do that. So. That's why we approached Microsoft. We convinced them that we would be a good addition to their product line. I believe, 7 years, not 7 years, almost 9 years after
yeah.
now, that people at Microsoft would agree that we were a good addition. They got a lot of good people. A lot of people stayed. Not everybody. You left pretty quick. What was?
8 months.
Just didn't kind of mesh.
Well, it was mostly, at Visio, I'd felt an obligation and a responsibility to stay and help and work and see it through. But I found when it moved into Microsoft that was a burden off my shoulders. And I realized, it wasn't that I disliked Microsoft, I actually was intrigued by what was going on, but there was, I was fitting in okay. But I thought there was other opportunities that I'd like to do before I got old, and so I took some time off, did a bunch of mountain climbing, and had 4 years before getting back into work.
So now that you're looking at Visio with outsider eyes after you guys have both left Visio, what are your kind of final thoughts and opinions on what you guys accomplished?
Well, it's still a strong product for Microsoft. It sold a lot of software last year. People still use it. It's kind of gotten a new life in some segments. I mean, we started off doing business process and flow charting, and some of the recent changes in business in the last couple of years have meant that there's more interest again in that kind of usage. And Microsoft's there, able to sell Visio into that market. I still like the product. I used it yesterday to do a diagram. Yeah, to try to visualize.
You got mad at certain versions. Has it gotten better?
Oh, yeah, well, I don't know. 2007, you can kind of live with it. I think I've seen some of the stuff they're doing for the next release, and it's pretty neat. I mean, the company keeps investing in it, and it keeps selling. So I think it's a good legacy. It's it's a product of the '90s. It's a product. It's desktop software. It's not kind of where the leading edge of software is these days, which would really be the internet. But hey, it's a good, solid application that is used by millions of people every day. The company was successful. The company, you know, built this house and built your house,
Yeah.
and you know, a bunch of stuff. So you kind of send you guys to private school. Send your daughters to private college. So
I mean, I look at it also now in hindsight and having more experience. At the time, it seemed like, oh, isn't this what happens to every company? And now I'm like, well, yeah, it was a pretty unique situation.
No.
I don't think I realized it quite as much. And also the environment that was set up, the company, just the feel of the company and the people who were working there, and the way it moved from building to building and grew at a nice state, and you know, had really good customers who loved the product and stuff like that. It actually, in retrospect, I think it was pretty unique, and a lot of people feel that way. A lot of the old employees are. I mean, it surprises me the number of people who get together for the alumni, or you know, the old homecoming sort of parties, and everybody's like wishing back to their Visio days. I don't do that much, but
yeah,
everybody's always like, oh, it was such a good time, and we loved working for Jeremy and Ted, and you know, all the companies I've been to since, none of them touches what Visio is like. You know.
well, it was a great time. I think, I think we hired some good people. I think you're right. We didn't grow too fast
Yeah.
that it got totally crazy. Frankly, the 90s were a very exciting time in the software
right.
business, a very
That's right.
exciting time in the U.S. economy.
Yeah.
Great time to be in the software business. You know, we were at an age, I mean, we were, you know, no surprise, we were younger than we are now. You know, started the company when I was about 35, so that was kind of like 35 to 45 was the real time of Visio, and that's a fun time. And we got done in time for you to go climb mountains.
That's right, not be too old.
Not be too old.